Bonjour. It's great to be here in Monaco. What a beautiful place. Great people, great food, great wine, and of course, I can't forget great cars. I recently joined Cisco after having spent more than 10 years across several organizations fighting the good fight against hackers and helping our customers accelerate business securely. And I've often been asked, why Cisco? And the reasons are simple. Everywhere you go, security remains a top-of-mind issue. And especially with megatrends such as bring your own device, consumerization of IT, cloud, virtualization, security is becoming ever more complex. And Cisco has a key role to play in all of these key trends. And that is the reason why we should look to Cisco, we should partner with Cisco, because it's one company that can help us address the security needs of today as well as the future. And if you don't believe me that these key trends that I talked about require us to think about security in a very different manner, then let me share with you what we've heard from some of the folks that we talked to on the streets of San Francisco.
Have you ever had to breach security?
No, I've never had to breach security in order to get the job done. Not at this point, no.
Right now, no, I do not have to at all.
Not really, no.
But I haven't yet. I use my iPhone not necessarily with my employer's authorization to do things, because I don't want to have to put a password into my iPhone every 30 seconds.
Actually, I like using Dropbox.
I would usually use the You Send It program.
I send work email home to my personal email address pretty much on a daily basis.
Yes, I definitely emailed a document to my personal email so I could work at home.
I do that all the time, and I know it's not good for my devices, but it's free internet. What are you going to do?
When I'm at home using my own computer, sometimes I work more productively outside of our IT department.
I believe these people are representative of a greater trend. One we are dealing with now, which is the pervasiveness of IT in our daily lives. What we need now is pervasiveness of security, the seamless integration of security in our daily lives. These folks are telling us that security today is cumbersome, and they go to great lengths to avoid security. And they do that because they want to do their job better. They want to do it more efficiently. They want to have fun while doing that. And all of this presents a big challenge for us. Do we lock it down, or do we free it up? Every time we push forward towards one of these approaches, free it up or lock it down, and we begin to adopt it, something else happens that causes us to reverse our course and implement just the other. Most obviously, we feel this pressure from our end users, right? Users in our organizations that we need to serve. They come and ask us, let me bring my own device to work. Let me connect from anywhere and everywhere. Let me use third-party applications to do my job more effectively. Of course, all of these demands are rational. So what do? We free it up. The challenge is that as soon as we do that, there are other demands that come to us. You need to protect my privacy. You need to make sure that the integrity of the network is maintained. You need to make sure that corporate data, sensitive information, does not leak. And you need to protect me from the threats of today and the unforeseen threats of tomorrow. So of course, what do? Well, we lock it down. And it is this constant battle between freeing it up or locking it down, going back and forth between these two approaches, that we land up compromising our own hard work. So let me give you an example. Not too long ago, we started on this journey of virtualization, this journey of cloud, this journey of freeing it up as applications are moving into the cloud and as increasingly we're bringing different kinds of devices in our enterprise. Let's take virtual desktops, VDI, in the call center as an example. These were created, especially in a call center, these were created so that the customer accounts could be accessed and processed in a secure central system. And of course, this made VDI very attractive in a call center environment. The problem was that in the early days of VDI, we failed to anticipate the demands placed by the intersection of how a call center works, how VDI works, and what are the security implications. What happens in a call center? Well, people work in shifts. So when a shift started, let's say 9 a.m. in the morning, every employee's terminal would boot up an antivirus agent, an AV agent, at the exact same time, all leveraging the same pool of resources because VDI runs on a virtual server infrastructure. So you could have hundreds of employees logging in simultaneously. And what would happen was this would trigger an AV storm that could last for 20 minutes or more, which would then bring down the data center. Now, 20 minutes is an eternity in a call center environment, and of course, very expensive. Now, of course, we have since solved this problem, but the lesson is that we introduced the new architecture to free it up, i.e. VDI, desktop resources. We tried to lock it down using yesterday's technology of placing an antivirus agent for every particular machine. So despite our best efforts to free things up using VDI, we ended up with a solution that produced just the opposite effect of locking it down. Why do I bring this up? Because I believe what we've been given is a wrong choice, is a false choice. we all keep thinking it's either lock it down, we don't allow our employees to bring their own devices, we don't adopt third-party applications, or it's just the opposite. It's free for all. No. This is a scenario where we need to have our cake and eat it too. At Cisco, we believe we don't have to make this choice. We can both lock it down and free it up. Let's take healthcare as an example, because it faces many of the same problems as any other industry. The key security transitions that we are seeing are about new ways of doing business. Bring your own device, changes at the endpoint, cloud, data center, virtualization so that doctors around the world can collaborate. These transitions require new ways of both freeing it up and locking it down. Healthcare is absolutely changing the way it does business. There are all these new advances in delivering healthcare, telemedicine, remote monitoring, electronic health records, digital reference tools. These innovations take advantage of doctors being able to bring their own devices, of the cloud, and the new data centers. Second, there are significant changes happening to our traditional endpoints, and they're being led by BYOD, bring your own device, and virtualization. Hospital staff, particularly doctors and administrators, are bringing their own devices, smartphones, tablets, you name it. And they're doing it for a very good reason. They want to provide all of us better healthcare. To expand on that particular point, we at Cisco believe that by 2016, there will be 8 billion mobile devices. And these devices will use 18 times the mobile data traffic that we use today. That's a lot of devices. These consumer devices are proliferating in healthcare, as well as every other industry that I've worked with, that I've spoken to. Even the traditional Windows desktops are changing. Remember the VDI example that we just walked through in the case of healthcare? Well, in that particular case, the desktop is being delivered over the network. And further, IPv6 makes it possible to give everything from workstations to heart monitors, from lab equipment to even samples, their own IP addresses. We are clearly moving towards an environment where everything will have an identity. And we, as security administrators, will have the task of identifying them, monitoring them, and managing them. We will have to decide whether we lock it down or free it up, or do it both and help our companies accelerate business securely. Third, doctors and specialists have to work together, no matter where they are geographically located. Your medical team could consist of a doctor from Ukraine, an expert in India, a specialist in Argentina, and your primary healthcare physician just around the corner. We, of course, all want this to happen because we want the best healthcare that's possible. And the only way to get that in today's world is through collaboration, delivered by a global platform. That global platform is the network. To deliver all of these new capabilities, collaboration and desktop virtualization being just two of many, our data centers are changing. Clearly, they are virtualizing at a very rapid pace. Research shows that about 50% of the data centers in small and medium businesses are already virtualized. But these data centers, as they're getting virtualized, they're not only impacting storage or compute, they're placing key stringent demands on the network, increasing the scale, complexity, throughput, and the desire to integrate, get common visibility across the network. These fundamental technology shifts are foundational to business transformation in all our organizations, not just healthcare. And don't forget the expectation. We need to both lock it down and free it up. There is just one problem. It's what we all worry about. It's why we are here in this beautiful country. It's security. More security for an electronic monitoring device, a doctor's tablet, a collaboration workspace. We have got to have it. Patient records or corporate data must be safe. Applications can't be malicious. And sensitive data can't come in and leave like mobile devices do. Of course, we at Cisco see it too. We read the headlines and we do our own research. So as an example, in January of this year, the World Economic Forum highlighted cyber attacks as the number 4 on the top 50 global risks. In our Q4 of 2011 Global Threat Report, we found that enterprise users experienced on average 339 malware encounters per month. That's an average of about 11 a day. And that was more than a 200% increase over the same period a year ago. And to compound the problem, the attack surface is increasing. All of us have more than one device. And the consequences of failure, unfortunately, are becoming much more expensive for our organizations. As of January 1st of this year in the US, large fines are being assessed for data breaches in violation of regulations like HIPAA. I believe in France, there's an equivalent called secret médical. How much? How expensive is it? It is too early to tell. But based on a report from Ponemon Institute, this could be as much as $200 per machine per incident, or $7 million per event. That's pretty expensive. Fortunately for all of us, the answer is there. It turns out the answer has been hiding in plain sight all along. The answer is the network. Everything I've described to you, bring your own device, the explosion of cloud-based applications, the virtualization of the data center, everything touches the network. The network is the connective tissue that binds us all. And when it comes to security, the network can deliver capabilities unlike any other part of the infrastructure. And just as the network has become the source for delivering voice, video, and data, so it is also becoming the infrastructure element to deliver us state-of-the-art security capabilities. So what can the network deliver that's unique, you might ask? Think about it. The network can tell you what's happening, where, and in real time across your organizations and between organizations around the world. It can see all devices, users, applications, how the data is being accessed by these applications, and the interaction amongst all of these things in real time. The network can see and control traffic, which is why firewalls remain very important. It can provide context, which is the relationship between these devices, the applications, and the data, which is why policy is very important. The network can provide secure remote access, which is why VPNs are very important. The network provides us mobility, the ability for all of us to sit here untethered and use our smartphones and tablets to access applications. That is being done by the network. And this is just what one network can do. Think about the power of seeing across multiple networks around the world. The network is the universal source of visibility and control going forward. And this isn't just about the future. We are already able to deliver better security today by unlocking the power of the network. Let me give you a few examples to illustrate my point. My first example is the global threat intelligence at network scale. By leveraging both global threat intelligence and a worldwide footprint from the network, we can anticipate the next threat. We can identify the current ones more quickly, and therefore we can decide what action to take. Should we allow it? Should we block it? Should we quarantine the endpoint? Should we quarantine the particular application, etc.? At Cisco, in our own experience with cloud security, in January 2012, close to 1,000 of our customers were each targeted with an average of 5 zero-day malware attacks per day. 5 zero-day malware attacks per day. And thanks to our cloud intelligence, we were able to block all of these attempts in real time. With the threat landscape as it exists today, scale from the network gives us a clear advantage. The more we see across the network, through the cloud, across thousands of organizations around the world, the faster we can protect ourselves from any new threat. And we are doing this today. The network is also the source of situational understanding that we all need to deliver on our critical defense in depth strategies. Almost all of you most likely have a defense in depth strategy. You use a firewall, an IPS, an email, and a web security, and a DLP, and the list is perhaps endless. But how do we make sure that by deploying all of those technology tools, we are protected? Well, that's what the network can allow us to do, is have someone look from the outside in to see whether there are ports open, whether there are vulnerabilities, whether we're seeing traffic on your network that we shouldn't be seeing. That's the power of security intelligence, and that's the power of the network. And this we are doing today. How does all of this happen? It happens in two key ways. The first is about studying the internet for reputation. By touching 1/3 of the total global email traffic, and by processing 30 billion web requests per day, we can see all types of malware, including basic attacks like phishing, or more advanced attacks like modern malware or advanced persistent threats. We analyze that information to determine the reputation of sites, to determine the reputation of IP addresses. If through this analysis we determine that an IP address has a poor reputation, well, guess what? We can leverage multiple products, multiple technologies deployed in an enterprise to protect ourselves. It could be an email, it could be identity, it could be IPS, it could be firewall, etc. We clearly now have a powerful insight by taking a global view of what's happening around the world. This is how we can help customers automatically block attacks in their network. But what we need to do is complement this by bringing insight, knowledge of what's happening within your network. This global view on reputation can be enhanced by adding visibility at the packet level through a mechanism called NetFlow. NetFlow, as I'm sure many of you already know, is a free resource available on most layer 3 devices, routers, firewalls, etc. It gives us even greater visibility into the traffic between devices and applications over the network. We know what applications and data are being accessed by which devices. And we can spot anomalies in behavior by analyzing and comparing the current behavior in the network with what we've seen historically. Now that's a powerful tool. That's a powerful capability to understand what's happening in your network through mechanisms like NetFlow and comparing that to what we are seeing around the world through global threat intelligence and the vast network footprint. Now notice, in this particular case, either NetFlow or global threat intelligence are not as powerful in and of themselves. It's when you put them together that we get amazing capabilities to protect our customers in real time. This is how we get a truly global perspective of what's happening in customer networks. My second example of the power of the network is about providing access control based on the context that only a network knows. This context consists of who, what, when, where, and how. Who is accessing the network? And not just an IP address, but an identity. Yesterday, when we had nailed up Ethernet cables, we could have done with just knowing the machine. But today, when increasingly all of us have multiple devices and access sensitive information from around the world, identity becomes critical. So we need to know who is accessing the network. What are they accessing? What application? Not a destination IP. And so that means we need to have granular visibility into applications. Where are you coming from? If you happen to be coming from, for example, a nation that is not very friendly to me, maybe I shouldn't allow you to get administrative right login into my router. When are you coming? If it's in the middle of the night and you're trying to log in as an administrator on one of my critical servers, maybe I shouldn't allow that. And how are you coming? What kind of device are you coming from? This is what we call differentiated device access. This is critical in the world of bring your own devices. This is how we allow our customers to be able to implement policies which say, if Manish is coming and accessing this application over his corporate provided laptop, that's allowed. But if he's accessing the same application over an iPhone or an iPad, maybe for good reasons, it's not allowed. That's the power of contextual information. That's the power of contextual visibility. And my third example is about delivering application visibility and control through the network. Now that the user has approved access to the network, we can take similar contextual data, the who and the what, and use it to decide if we free that user up to access specific applications, lock him down, or do something in the middle. My examples are my examples. As I talk to many, many customers around the world, I realize that everyone has a rather unique use case. Everyone wants to have access to applications in a slightly different manner. And that's what at Cisco we are working to provide, is a centralized policy engine that uses business language to take the policies that you want to implement in your enterprise and enforce them, so that we can allow you to both lock it down and free it up. With all that information tied together, let's go back to our healthcare example. Let's use some examples to illustrate what we can do now. Should we allow Facebook in the break room in a hospital? Perhaps, right? Who doesn't love Facebook? But should Facebook be allowed in the emergency room? Maybe not. We want the doctors to be focused on the next emergency that is going to come through the door. Viewing surgery procedures on YouTube? That's probably okay. Playing Farmville on Facebook? Nah, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Uploading files to a public internet site? Doesn't seem to make sense. But if doctors want to access a website such as Caring Bridge to put the patient's pictures so that the family can look at them, maybe that should be allowed. Now, each of your organization can take similar policies and enforce them. And we are doing this today. So, to summarize, so far what we've learned is we've got global threat awareness, visibility, context, and granular control. We've eliminated the compromise that we've traditionally had to make between locking it down and freeing it up. Consider this example. At Cisco, we've implemented all of these technologies. And in a single day, on average, we are blocking 12 million transactions, 23,000 Trojan downloader attempts, over 7,000 Trojan check-ins, over 700 worms, and nearly 100 phishing URLs. You can only get this type of contextual security by leveraging the network, because it's the network that touches everything, and everything touches the network. By taking this approach, Cisco has freed close to 100,000 employees around the world. We all have the ability to bring our own device. We all have the ability to access third-party applications. Look, unless I've missed something here, you can't expect to have physical presence on all your endpoints. That's just not going to happen. There are too many kinds of devices, and users are working outside the traditional four walls. In our world, the network is becoming the only constant source of intelligence that we can rely on, and the control point that we can depend upon. Let's use the specific use case of defending a hyperscale data center. a 21st century data center to see how network security and everything that we've talked about thus far can help us achieve the security goals in a massive data center. The data center poses similar challenges as we've discussed earlier in the context of bring your own device or virtualization. We need to make the data center and the applications available 24/7. High reliability, high performance, low latency. Yet, we need to be able to provide adequate control that only the right people should have access to the right applications. Do you see that the same question that we've been discussing thus far of locking it down or freeing it up comes across in the case of the data center as well? While more than 50% of the workloads in a data center have been virtualized, we are still in the early stages of the journey to the cloud. As applications move from the physical environment to a virtual environment to a cloud environment, we will have to ensure consistency along the journey. Consistency in the security policies that we enforce, consistency in the kind of visibility that we get, and consistency in the level of integration that we desire to enable business solutions and transformations like collaborations around the world. Given the diverse nature of what's happening in your physical data center, in your virtualized data center, and your journey to the cloud, this can only be achieved through the network. And regardless of where you are in this journey to the cloud, we believe there are three key requirements that remain most critical to ensure that we both lock it down and free it up in the case of a data center. Those requirements are segmentation, threat defense, and visibility. Let's first talk about segmentation. Segmentation allows us to define who can access what. But in today's highly mobile world, as we've discussed earlier, we can't merely use IP addresses. We have to leverage a much richer set of information of the context. Who, what, when, where, how. This helps us ensure that while a data center remains highly available, only the right people have access to the right applications. Imagine trying to do this in any other way. Imagine trying to open up your applications while providing 24/7 access to people who are trying to access these applications over iPhones, over tablets, over Android devices, over their corporate provided laptops. How do you differentiate? As I've said earlier, network is the only way we can help achieve these goals. The next is threat defense. Clearly, threats to applications and sensitive information has never been greater. The evolution from script kiddies to hackers to nation states, the world of threats is increasingly becoming complex. And as we discussed earlier in the context of global threat intelligence, the only way we can address this challenge is by having a global view through something like global threat intelligence, but also a local view of what's happening in your own network. And as I acknowledged earlier, this is the set of capabilities that we are delivering today. Lastly, but definitely not the least, visibility. As data centers are virtualized, more applications are hosted per data center, increasing the complexity and requirements for gaining insight into the data center. We need network management solutions that provide monitoring and reporting capabilities across the data center, yet allow multiple personnel to get access to only information that they need on that network management console. Network and security management. Why? Network and security management, especially in a highly virtualized data center, need to work much more closely together, because the historical boundaries of compute, storage, network, and applications in a virtualized data center are disappearing. We have a hypervisor that also have a virtualized network, also has applications. Now we need security integrated into it. This is the consistent set of visibility and reporting that we need to do. We need to get. And that's at Cisco what we're providing. At Cisco, it is these kinds of hard problems that we are trying to solve for our customers. We are committed to providing you the security solutions to address the growing needs that arise from BYOD, bring your own device, that arise from mobility, that arise from virtualized data centers, and are going to be seen tomorrow as you take the journey to the cloud. This requires a system-level approach that leverages the underlying network infrastructure effectively. Why shouldn't we, as we've discussed earlier, it's the network that everything touches, even in this journey, even in these mega trends of BYOD, cloud, and virtualization. We are delivering on these requirements today. In closing, let me leave you with this thought. We believe visibility and context-aware enforcement, the two things that we all need the most to embrace these new trends, can only be addressed by unlocking the power of the network. The network connected the first two computers, and it is going to connect the next 50 billion devices. 10 years from now, none of us know what the endpoint will look like. But I guarantee you one thing, the network will. Merci. Thank you. So we have about 15 minutes. They had told me that they will boot me at 9:45. So if there are any questions, I would be happy to answer. I think there are mics in case you want to get up. All right. Well, in that case, thank you again.